Hello, I'm Heath Dawson, Executive Director with the Living Word Outdoor Drama.
I'm Logan Hill, the Artistic Director out at the Living Word.
Hopefully you enjoyed last week's devotional. We're here with another devotional this week. This week we're going to be studying the Beattitudes. For those of you at home, we will be looking at Matthew 5, 3 through 12 today. And as you watched last week, how we started our devotional, we asked you a few questions. We want to know something that you're grateful for in your life. So at home, write that down, or in the comments below, something that you're grateful for in your life. Logan and I shared something last week, what we were grateful for. And intercession. What's something right now that a challenge is that's going on in your life? Maybe you've got a family member that's sick and you need some prayer for that. Or, it's a job loss or something like that. Or maybe it's just struggling with today's times. Everybody out there is really going crazy in this world. And maybe it's just trying to figure out how to deal with that. But what's something that you have challenges? And again, you can write that in the comments below. And we'll certainly pray for any kind of challenges you may be facing. And then accountability. Did you take last week's lesson about John the Baptist? Did you take that and share that with somebody? And did you learn something that maybe that Logan said and you took that and used that last week, or something I said? Did you be accountable to God and share the good news of Jesus Christ with someone? So those are kind of the way we start things. We're going to go ahead and dive into this week's passage. Again, the Beatitudes, Matthew 5, 3 through 12. Logan, why don't you go ahead and read the passage for us?
And I'm going to start with the New Living Translation. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for Him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way.
Thank you, Logan. And before we went on air, Logan was sitting here trying to recall the Beatitudes as he plays Jesus in the drama One of Three Men, with John Ornette and George Clark being the other two. But they do the Beatitudes scene, and he still has it memorized.
It was a little different reading it this way than the way that we do it out the Living Word. But I mean, it's still the same, same words.
Right. Well, want to thank you for reading that. And I'm going to go ahead and reread it, and it's going to be from the New International Version. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So let's go ahead and dive in and discuss a little bit. There's a lot obviously going on in this passage, but let's dive in and talk a little bit about what's going on here, Logan.
So just something that stuck out to me is one thing that from playing Jesus, when we do the blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. I know we usually always look down at Mother Mary and just point at her, because we're just signifying that she is going to be mourning later on the loss of her son. And just God says that we're blessed in that's something that is a blessing, that you can just rejoice in the life that the person lived. Even though you may be mourning them, you can rejoice in the life that they lived, and not so much mourning the loss of them, but rejoicing in their life.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any other takeaways? I mean, probably hundreds of them. But
And I know from a personal example with work, I know sometimes you can get mistreated and just you pray for them that treat you badly. And I know that's a different section of the Sermon on the Mount, but
Right.
that's also with this. You may get persecuted, and it's just a blessing if you are persecuted, and just reaching out and praying for those people that may be treating you badly or persecuting you, and just because God is blessing you through that persecution, you also should be praying for them.
yeah, that's a good point. For me, verse 6 is just stands out to me when he says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." I can think about a time in my life where I wasn't hungering and thirsting for righteousness, and I wasn't filled. I remember being at a rock concert of about 120,000 people, and I remember looking around, and even though I was around 119,999 people, I was lonely. And you'd think, how in the world could a guy be lonely in this with this many people around? But it was because I wasn't filled. But once I started hungering and thirsting for righteousness, my life has totally been filled. I've gotten friendships with people like yourself, in the Love family. And I mean, it's crazy what God will do when you start hungering and thirsting for righteousness.
When you start searching for the right things instead of the wrong things.
Yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into our questions that we usually wrap up with. What can we learn about God from this passage? Or what can't we learn from him, really? But yeah, what can we learn from God?
What stuck out to me is every single thing is God blesses. God blesses, or blessed are. And just, he is just bestowing blessings upon us. When we feel like we're in a bad situation, we're poor, we're mourning, we're meek, we're hungering and thirsting, and he just reaches out and blesses us. It's just, he blesses us in any situation, any circumstance, and just that's what really sticks out to me is he is a blessing.
Yeah, and let's go back over, touch upon those real fast again, as we have the train rolling behind us here. not at the Living Word set, of course, but we got a train coming behind us here. But those who are going to be blessed are the poor in spirit, those who mourn, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the meek, the merciful, the pure in heart, and the persecuted and insulted. Persecuted because of righteousness and insulted because of Christ.
And those that are mocked.
Yeah.
And they say all sorts of evil things against you.
It's a large group of people who are going to be blessed, but can you think of times in your life where you fit into one of those categories?
Oh yeah, definitely. You can find different spots where you've been maybe persecuted or somebody's said evil things against you, and just everybody has probably lost somebody and mourned over the loss of that person. And he just says that we're blessed in those situations and that we can take comfort in those because God says those that are mourned, they will be comforted. They're blessed and they'll be comforted. And just those that are persecuted, the kingdom of heaven is there. So we belong in the kingdom of heaven then. And he just bestows those blessings on us by sending his son, Jesus, to die for us.
That's a good point, Logan. And again, with Jesus sacrificing his life, you look back at the pure in heart. That's another category I look at. And just think how pure of heart Jesus was.
Oh, yeah.
Everything he did, he always was just so pure in his motives. And when you look at, the pure in heart also are people who, are lacking self-serving discipline. They lack self-serving discipline. You know what I mean? And Christ had the ultimate sacrifice. I mean, he was all about the Father and never about himself. And he was just the pure in heart with Christ really sticks out to me.
And the pure in heart doesn't mean you always have to get it right. Your heart's in the right place. You've got your heart in the right place, and you may get it wrong sometimes, but you're trying.
Right. Well, let's switch over then. Is there anything else, though, you want to say about learning from God in this passage?
No, I mean,
I think we covered it.
We could go on and on.
Right. Let's talk about people. What can we learn about people in this passage? I think a lot.
Yeah, and just God bless it. I come back to the morning because everybody's lost somebody, and just God blesses them, and we should bless them as well. We should be there for them as well. So we should be there to comfort them. And we can then be that blessing from God to them through that.
I agree. I wrote some notes down, because when you look at the 8 groups of people who will be blessed if we're this way, again, like I say, you can think probably of a time where you've not been one of these categories, or not been multiple categories. I know for myself, but when you start diving in, the poor in spirit, we're called to be humble. And sometimes as human beings, we struggle with humility. So that's one thing, I think as a people, we need to learn that we need to be humble. Those who mourn, Logan, I had another different kind of thought on it too, is, we need to be mourning because of our sinful nature.
Yeah.
When we sin, we should be mourning over sinning, because once we mourn, God is going to bless us, and it's going to allow us to renew our relationship with Him.
Yes.
When we mourn, He is going to bless us, and it'll allow us to then get back with Him and be able to follow the way of God once again. So I kind of was looking at mourning, yes, as death, but also mourn over our sinful nature, the way that we are natural sinners.
And that's a good point there, is the mourning over the sins that we do that causes God to be mournful over us. And so we should mourn over those as well, and then take the steps to get back in the right line. So that's a good point.
Thank you. And then the meek, that's another thing about being humility. It's kind of a disposition of humility, and we are to be submitting to the will of God. We're to show self-control. Being meek is showing self-control. I know I can think back 15 years ago when I used to play softball 4 or 5 nights a week, and there was times where I didn't show the best self-control. But and now you can kind of chuckle, but really it's really not funny, because we are called to have self-control and to be meek. So we need to make sure that we're always submitting to the will of God, not the will of ourselves. And then when we look at the merciful, we're supposed to have a benevolent nature towards others. When people are suffering, we're supposed to have a soft spirit towards them and help them out. And when we do that, God is saying that, yes, you are going to be blessed when we are that way towards people. And we should always show love and empathy. I know that, being a good friend with Logan, I've seen you show love and empathy to people that are involved with the living word. And sometimes it's not easy to show love and empathy even to our fellow Christians at times.
Sometimes it's not, but that's what we're called to do.
Right.
As Christians.
And I've seen you do that. So that's really neat. And then when you look again, going back to the persecuted, if we're righteous, we are going to be persecuted. And because sometimes when we stand out and we feel and people see our lives, they can tend to be jealous that we have things going on.
And they'll try to point out any little wrong thing in your life through that.
But we don't have our lives together. It's because we have God. That our lives appear to be together because God is in control of our lives. And then insulted. I know that I've been insulted because of Christ. I mean, can you think of a time that maybe you've been insulted?
I can't name a time exactly. I know at work I've had times where I've had people just point out stuff that are like, well, you never cuss anywhere. Like, what's wrong with you? Come on, you can just say one cuss word. I mean, God's not going to judge you just saying one cuss word. And I'm like, no, I choose not to.
Right, and that's a good point. People are always looking the way we live, and we need to be mindful of that. But that's the Beatitudes this week, Matthew 5:3-12. If you want to read that